Gazing at the two little figure with their brown skins, tangled hair and dark, earnest eyes, we felt ourselves strangely attracted. We watched for a few moments, then as trade slackened, we went over. They greeted us with friendly faces. So for a week, Arthur stayed in Verona. There, he came frequently across these two boys, and these two boys started helping the author. Arthur was touched by this real incident that happened in his life of meeting these two gentlemen of Verona. Hello students, I am Anil, lecturer, Department of English, Vidhyaashram, Pre-University College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. In this session, we are going to look at the last chapter of your textbook, that is, Two Gentlemen of Verona, written by A.J. Conin. To know about A.J. Conin, Archibald Joseph Conin, who was born in July, was a Scottish novelist and physician whose works combined realism with social criticism. He won a large Anglo-American readership. He is a very famous writer, A.J. Conin, and his stories depend on real-life incidents. Here, this story, Two Gentlemen of Verona, it's a real-life experience of the author. Let us see what is there in the story. The background of this chapter is this. As we drove through the foothills of Alps, two small boys stopped us on outskirts of Verona, selling wild strawberries, bright scarlet berries that looked delicious against the dark green leaves lining the wicker basket. Don't buy one luggy, our cautious driver, you will get fruits much better in Verona. He shrugged his shoulders to convey his disapproval of their shabby appearance. So what happened? Here, the author was traveling in his car and he had his driver luggy. And he saw two boys selling strawberries. But the driver said, don't buy it on street. We will buy it in Verona. There you get a very good kind of strawberries. One boy had on a worn jersey and cut-off khaki pants, the other a short Hun army tunic gathered in loose folds about his skinny frame. Gazing at the two little figure with their brown skins, tangled hair and dark, earnest eyes, we felt ourselves strangely attracted. My companion spoke to the boys that they were brothers. Nicola, the elder, was 13. Jacopo, who bravely came up to the door handle of the car, was nearly 12. We bought their biggest basket, then set off toward town. But Arthur decided to buy the strawberries. They went to these two boys. They were not good looking, they were shabby looking, but still, they managed to get their names. One was Nicola, he was the elder, he was 13 years old, and the brother Jacopo, he was 12 years old. So both of them were brothers. They got to know, and then they bought the biggest basket, and they just went to Verona. Verona is a lovely city, rich in history, with quiet medieval streets and splendid buildings of an exquisite pale honey color. Bombed in the recent war, it was lost its bridges, but not its gaiety or charm. Coming out of a hotel, we drew up short. There, bent over shoeshine boxes beside the fountain in the public square, doing a brisk business, were our two young friends of the previous afternoon. Here in Verona, the author enjoys the city. Verona is known for its rich history, but recently due to a war it was bombed and its bridges were damaged. Then he went out of his hotel to roam around the city. There, near a fountain, he found the same two boys which he had met in the previous afternoon. And those two boys were doing this job of polishing the shoes of all the visitors. We watched for a few moments, then as trade slackened, we went over. They greeted us with friendly faces. I thought you picked fruits for living, I said. We do many things, sir, Nicola answered seriously. He glanced at us hopefully. Often, visitors through the town to Juliet's Tomb and other places of interest. All right, I smiled, you take us along. So, these two children, they said. Nicola replies, sir, we do many jobs, not only picking strawberries, but also other kinds of jobs as well. And then he also talks about many other places to visit in Verona. My interest was again provoked by their remarkable demeanor. They were childish enough and in many ways quite artless. Jacopo, although his lips were paler than they should have been, was lively as a squirrel. Nicola's smile was steady and engaging. Yet in both these boyish faces, there was a seriousness which one respected, an air of purpose far beyond their years. So here the author is trying to tell us these two were still 13 and 12 years old respectively, Nicola and Jacopo. But still, they are doing this job They were quite artless. That means they did not know what to do, but they were still doing something. But what they were doing, it was a serious kind of a thing. So therefore, the author says, yes, okay, we will engage these boys, and then he goes with them. In the week which followed, we saw them frequently, for they proved extremely useful to us. If we wanted a pack of American cigarettes or seats for the opera or the name of a good restaurant that could provide good ravioli, Nicola and Jacopo could be relied upon to satisfy our needs with their unusual cheerful competence. So for a week, author stayed in Verona. There, he came frequently across these two boys, and these two boys started helping the author. They were called for everything. If he wanted something, he would go on and see this boy, and those two boys would do everything for them, reserving the tickets, knowing the name of a good restaurant for a good food. So these two children were very much aware of the things in Verona. What struck one most was their unremitting willingness to work. During these summer days, under the hot sun and in the long evenings, when the air blew chill from the mountains, they shined shoes, sold fruits, hawked newspapers, conducted tourists round the town, ran errands, exploited every avenue which the troubled economy of the town left open to them. So here you have to observe, during this summer, these two boys did not simply sit. They were working as possible as they could. So here, the author says, what struck one most was their unremitting willingness to work. So now he starts appreciating their willingness to work. They never sat simply without doing anything. They exploited every opportunity which they got to earn money. And author was touched by their willingness to work. One night we came upon them in the windy and deserted square, resting on the stone pavements beneath the pale arc lights. A bundle of unsold newspapers lay at his feet, while Jacopo, his head pillowed upon his brother's shoulder, was asleep. It was nearly midnight. Why are you out so late, Nicola? He had started sharply as I spoke, but now he gave me his quiet, independent glance. Waiting for the last bus from Padua, we shall sell our papers when it comes in. So here, the author comes across these two boys. They were sitting on a bench and they were waiting for somebody. They were waiting for a bus, the last bus to come. And they were keeping the set of newspapers to be sold to those buyers. And author got to know that they were waiting for that. And Jacopo was already asleep on his brother's shoulder. It was already midnight. So they are working tirelessly from morning till night, even at midnight. Must you keep at it so hard? You both looked rather tired. We are not complaining, sir. His tone, while perfectly polite, discouraged further inquiry. But next morning, when I went over to the fountain to have my shoes shined, I said, Nicola, the way you and Jacopo work, you must earn quite a bit. You spend nothing on clothes. You eat little enough. When I see you have meal, it's usually black bread and figs. Tell me, what do you do with your money? Then on the next day, they are still working in the fountain. They are working near the fountain, polishing the shoes. Author was very much eager to know what about these two boys. He went to Nicola and said, Nicola, you earn too much, but you don't spend on your clothes. You look shabby. You don't eat good food. You eat black bread and figs. What do you do with all the money? He wanted to know, since these two children are working from morning till evening, he wanted to know. He colored deeply under his sunburn, then grew pale. His gaze fell to the ground. You must be saving up to emigrate to America, I suggested. He looked at me sideways, spoke with an effort. We should greatly like to go to the States, but here, at present, we have other plans. What plans? He smiled uncomfortably with that remote air which never failed to baffle me. Just plans, sir, he answered in a low voice. Well, I said, we are leaving on Monday. Is there anything I can do for you before we go? So, the boys did not tell what they were actually doing with their money. So, author said, oh, I think you are saving this money to go to United States. Then the boy said, yes, sir, one day we may go there, but we have other plans. Author was again curious to know about what other plans were, but Nicola did not say anything. Anyhow, the author said, okay, anyhow, we are leaving Monday. Nicola shook his head, but suddenly Jacopo's nostrils quivered like a puppy's, and he piped up eagerly. Sir, he burst out, every Sunday we make a visit to the country, to Paletta, 30 kilometers from here. Usually we hire bicycles, but tomorrow, since you are so kind, you might send us in your car. I had already told Luigi he might have the Sunday off. However, I answered, I'll drive you out myself. There was a pause. Nicola was glaring at his younger brother in vexation. So here, Jacopo could not stay quiet. He said, "Sir, if you could, actually on a Sunday, what we do is this. We go to a town, Poletta, 30 kilometers from Verona. We usually hire a bicycle, but tomorrow, since you are very kind to help us, can you please send us your car?" And the author said, "Oh, I told my driver to take an off. Anyhow, no problem, I'll drive you to Poletta." When author said this, Nicola was a bit serious. He was a kind of angry towards his brother for seeking help from him. "We could not think of troubling you, sir," Nicola said to the author. "Sir, we don't want to trouble you." "It won't be any trouble." He bit his lip, then in rather put out tone, he said, "Very well." Then he said, "Very well, okay, fine then. You could drop us." The following afternoon, we drove to the tiny picturesque village set high upon the hillside amidst sheltering chestnuts groves, with a few pines on the upper slopes and a deep blue lake beneath. I imagined that our destinations would be some humble dwelling, but directed by Jacob's shrill treble, we drew up at a large red-roofed villa surrounded by a high stone wall. I could scarcely believe my eyes, and before I could recover, my two passengers had leaped nimbly from the car. So what happened the next day? The author took his car. He took these two boys to wherever they asked, Poletta. When they went there, he was expecting these two boys were living in a humble place. But what happened? When they reached the destination, author found a big building. It was a large red-roofed villa surrounded by a high stone wall. So I could scarcely believe, author could scarcely believe his own eyes. These two boys belonged to this big villa. Suddenly these two, when he turned towards these two boys, they have already jumped out of the car. They had gone in. "We shall not be long, sir, perhaps only an hour. Maybe you'd like to go to the cafe in the village for a drink." They disappeared beyond the corner of the wall. When a few minutes had elapsed, I followed. I found a grilled side entrance and determinedly rang the bell. So he did not go to any restaurant to take a coffee or something. He followed the boys after 1 minute, where he went near a door and he rang the bell. A pleasant-looking woman with a ruby complexion and steel-rimmed spectacles appeared. I blinked as I saw she was dressed in a white uniform of a trained nurse. So when he went there, he met a charming woman, but she was a nurse. She was not the maid, she was nobody, but she was a nurse. "I just brought two small boys here." "Ah, yes," her face lit up. She opened the doors to admit me. "Nicola and Jacob, I will take you up." Then the author told to the nurse, "Yes, I brought two boys here." Then the nurse got to know, "Oh, yes, Nicola and Jacopo. Yeah, I'll take to them." She led me through a cool, tiled vestibule into the hospital the villa had become. We traversed a waxed and polished corridor between well-equipped wards. We went upstairs to a southern balcony, which opened to a vista of the gardens and the lake. On the threshold of the cubicle, the nurse paused, put her fingers to her lips, and with a smile bade me look through the glass partition. The two boys were seated at the besides of a girl of about 20, who, propped up on pillow wearing a petty lace jacket, was listening to their chatter, her eyes soft and tender. So this woman nurse, she took to the ward. When they went near the ward, the nurse signaled, "Shh," that means to stay quiet. And through the glass partition, she told the author to look what these two boys were doing. These two boys were meeting a young girl of 20 years old. She was bedridden, but she was very eager to listen to those two boys. And those two boys were there for her. Despite the faint flush high upon her cheekbones and the queer inertness of her posture, one could discern at a glance her resemblance to her brothers. A vase of wild flowers stood on her table beside a dish of fruit and several books. So looking at that girl and her facial features, one could recognize that that girl is the sister of these two. She explained, quite alone in the world except for this sister, Lucia. Their father, a widower, a well-known singer at La Scala, had been killed in the early part of the war. Shortly afterward, a bomb had destroyed their home and thrown the three children into the streets. They had always known as comfortable and cultured life. Lucia had herself been training as a singer, and they had suffered horribly from near starvation and exposure to the cold Veronese winter. So what about these three children? These three children had a very good living previously. Their father was a singer. And what happened? He was dead in the early days of the war, and all of a sudden, when the city was bombed, they lost their house. They belonged to a cultured family, but they lost everything. And on that night of bombing, they had lost everything. They came to the streets. Lucia wanted to be a singer, but all her dreams were destroyed, and these three children came to the streets. That was a tragic story of these three children, Lucia, Nicola, and Jacopo. They had barely kept themselves alive in the sort of shelter they built with their own hand amidst the rubble. Then the German elite guard established headquarters in Verona. The boys grew to hate those harsh, unwanted masters, and then the resistance movement began secretly to form. They were among the first to join. It was not a matter of playing war. Their extreme youth and insignificant size, added to an intimate knowledge of the neighboring hills, made them immensely valuable. They were used to carry messages to the forces of liberation, and more dangerous still, to ferret out information on the movements of the German troops. So what happened? It was during the First World War. The German was occupying the space of Verona. When they came, they hated them the most for destroying their lives, for destroying their places. So what they did, they joined the rebel forces. So since their size was too small, they played a significant role as messengers. They wanted to help their native people. I need not tell you how fine they were. These infants, how they went in the darkness through the mountain passes with letters in their shoes, which might cause them to be shot. And when it was all over and we had peace at last, they came back to their beloved sister and they found her suffering from tuberculosis of the spine, confronted during the miseries of the war. So when everything was over, they had put their lives in danger and worked for the rebels, and everything was over. But what happened when they came back? Though everything was seeming to be fine, their sister, she had tuberculosis of the spine. Therefore, now she is admitted to the hospital. Did they give up? I do not have to answer that question. They brought her here, persuaded us to take her into the hospital. In the 12 months she has been our patient, she has made good progress. There is every hope that one day she will walk and sing again. But these two children, Nicola and Jacopo, did they lose hope? No, they brought her here and then they persuaded her. It has been a year. It has been 1 year. And from 1 year, these two children are working hard to keep her in this hospital. And she is progressing. They have hope that she will one day get up and walk and sing. Of course, everything is so different now. Food so scarce and dear, we could not keep going unless we charged a fee. But every week, Lucia's brothers have made their payments. I don't know what they do. I do not ask. Work is scarce in Verona, but whatever it is, I know they do it well. And the nurse says that we are trying very hard. Of course, everything is so difficult now. Food is scarce. We don't have much food. Therefore, we are charging a little fee to maintain the patients in the hospital. But these two children, Nicola and Jacopo, they are paying on time. I don't know what they do in Verona, but still, I think they are doing everything that they do in a good way. I waited outside until the boys rejoined me and then drove them back to the city. They sat beside me, not speaking, in a mood of quiet contentment. For my part, I did not say a word. I knew they would prefer to feel that they safely kept their secrets. War with its attendant horrors had not broken their spirit, and if an untimely maturity had been enforced upon them, at last they had accepted it with dignity and courage. Their selfless action brought a new nobility to human life, gave promise of a greater hope for human society. So here the author is trying to say that he waited for these two boys. They came in. They thought the author did not know anything. They were quite happy after meeting their sister. They sat quietly, but the author started thinking about these two boys. The harsh reality, so much of responsibility has been pushed onto the shoulders of these two boys, and they did not crumble with the weight of that responsibility, but they have taken it up with dignity and courage. Their selfless action brought a new nobility to human life, gave promise of greater hope for human society. So these two boys are an example for the humanity and responsibility and courage which everyone should have. And there ends the story of two gentlemen of Verona. They were two boys of 13 and 12 years old, respectively. Their sister was admitted into a hospital. She had tuberculosis of the spine. She wanted to be a singer, but due to the war, their beautiful life with their father had been destroyed. But these two gentlemen, they did not give up their hope. They did not take the wrong way in life. Every week they go and visit their sisters, but they did not take anybody's help. They were working hard from morning till evening. They never left any opportunity that they had to earn. So this is an example of these two children taking the responsibility of their sister and hoping that she would recover one day and she would sing. Author was touched by this real incident that happened in his life of meeting these two gentlemen of Verona. This is the story of the two gentlemen of Verona, written by A.J. Conin. Verona is a city in Italy. The Alps is the mountain range in Europe. Worn means old and damaged. Tunic means a loose outer garment that does not have sleeves. Slacken means gradually become less. Demeanor means appearance and behavior. Artless means innocent. Opera, musical drama. Ravioli, an Italian dish called pasta filled with meat or cheese. Vestibule, small enclosed area on the front of a house. Cubicle, a very small enclosed area. Hawk, to try or sell anything. To try to sell things by going from place to place, asking people to buy them. This is about the story, the two gentlemen of Verona. You have to remember the names of these children: Nicola, Jacopo. Nicola was 13 years old, the elder one. Jacopo was the younger one, 12 years old. They are working in Verona. They are not working in an established setting. They are doing all the chores that one could do to earn money. And why are they earning money? To pay the fee for their sister, who is suffering from tuberculosis of spine and is admitted in a hospital in Poletta, 30 kilometers away from Verona. The author comes across these two boys. They are doing all the jobs that they could do to earn money, but they were not spending it for their own comforts. They wanted this money to take care of their sisters. And at this very small age, they have taken up so much of responsibility for themselves. This touches the heart of the author, A.J. Conin, and he writes about them. They never wanted to take help from anybody. They used to work with dignity and courage and take care of their sisters. And what happened in their life? Nicola, Jacopo, and Lucia, these three children. Lucia is the eldest daughter for their parent. They had their father. He was a single parent. And then what happened? Due to the war, he had been killed. And the bombing the city had brought these three children into the streets. So once Germans entered Italy, they hated Germans. These two children, with their knowledge of the terrain, they helped the rebels against Germans. Once everything was free, they could not go back to their normal life. Their sister developed tuberculosis due to war effects. And now these two children are taking care of their sister. This is the story of two gentlemen of Verona. We shall see in the next class. Thank you.